Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, a fight to save contraceptives. Also, a daughter pleads to end the death penalty. And Alabama's gaming laws, they're complicated.
Well, how do you tell the time? I take the 10 minutes on this one and subtract it from the 20 minutes on that one. Then I divide by the 2 in the middle. Well, what time is it now? 10 minutes to 4.
Yeah, like complicated and stupid. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by Susan Britt, research guru extraordinaire, and Josh Moon, columnist and investigative reporter at APR. Welcome.
Hey, guys.
Hey, y'all.
Well, I hope everybody had a happy Thanksgiving, an abundance of turkey and dressing and green beans and all kinds of goodness, right?
All that good stuff.
And it's good times. I tell you what's not a good time. Alabama has the most chaotic, nonsensical gambling laws that Beelzebub couldn't even imagine. But Josh, this past week, you did a story on how our gaming laws have run into a roadblock where they actually closed down an entire city. I mean, this is just crazy, right?
Yeah. Yes. Crazy is a good way to describe it. The little small town of Lipscomb around Birmingham in Jefferson County. They have been, for the past dozen years or so, issuing out bingo licenses for companies that want to run bingo halls in their town. And some of these places, of course, are running electronic bingo halls. Now, those have been deemed illegal by our Supreme Court. They are deemed legal by some constitutional amendments. The Attorney General's office tends to chase these places around from time to time, just sporadically. And listen, I'm not going to dog Steve Marshall on this. His office was invited by the city council members of Lipscomb to come in because they felt like something nefarious was going on with the way these things were being managed by the mayor. They asked him to come in to take a look at this. His office did the right thing in this instance and came in and looked at this stuff. And I'll say overall, all of this is not Steve Marshall's fault. This is his office is tasked with enforcing the laws on these things and trying to keep up with it. And it is impossible for them to do so because our laws are so ridiculous. I mean, they are, it's just absurd the way we've gone about trying to handle this thing. And just I'll say that basically you have a setup in our state where you have constitutional amendments, the same kind of constitutional amendments that allow some counties to have to sell alcohol and others to not. And then you have a Supreme Court who came in and said specifically that some of these constitutional amendments are improper. And so you have a battle of the courts. Judges and local law enforcement have repeatedly said that the constitutional amendments take precedent over the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has continually said, no, we're the ultimate rulers of this. And so then you have everybody else in the middle.
Susan, that's like having the Three Stooges times three ruling over your laws.
But also the laws aren't clear.
Right.
They're not clear. They're conflicting. So, sheriff's departments don't know what to do. City councils don't know what to do. So there's got to be some defining law that is very, very clear about what is legal and what is illegal in the state.
I mean, we had a situation just a few years ago where the legislature tried to pass gaming legislation that would not only address the gaming issue, but address the laws that govern gaming in a sensible way. But no one could agree on that. I mean, the law as enacted, what was that, 2008, Josh? I don't remember, 2008, somewhere in there. The way they ruled on it. They said that the only way you could play bingo in Alabama was on paper cards.
Right.
Now
right.
that's like saying we're going to mandate you play, you play video games on an Atari. I mean, it doesn't make any sense if you were born in this century or lived, to long enough to live in this century. It's like saying all calls must be made on a rotary phone. It's stupid.
It is stupid.
Well, I'll say yes, that is stupid. But to go even farther than that, I mean, and to kind of put this into context for people. All right. So basically, for these counties to have these laws, okay, for them to have the constitutional amendments, first of all, their local representatives had to take this before the legislature, and the entire legislature had to vote to approve it. Then it went back to the people, and they held a vote on whether or not to approve these things. And so, like in the case of Macon County, let's say, because I know it the best, I did a lot of work on that. In Macon County's amendment, the ultimate person that's over the gaming laws in that county, according to our state constitution, is the sheriff of that county.
Right.
And the sheriff is supposed to determine which games are legal and which games are illegal, and not anyone else. And so then you have the Supreme Court coming in over the top of that and saying, no, you can't do that. It doesn't matter what the people voted. It's ridiculous all the way around in this, because you have a set of rules that's supposed to apply to everybody, and they don't apply.
Right. And until the legislature acts, it's going to continue to be a chaotic mess. And see, the fines are just misdemeanors. Why not open up and just do it and
Pay your fines.
pay your fine and go back on it? Hey, one of the other things I want to jump to real quick is taxes. We're always concerned about taxes. Now, we've had a big influx of money from the federal government with the ARPA Act and all the COVID funds that came in, which also stimulated inflation, unfortunately. But Alabama's tax revenue is about to stabilize from the pandemic. But what we're going to see is some shortfalls, Susan, because while we're stabilizing, we're not going to have all that extra cash that we've been spending on our tchotchkes and our niceties and things like that, like schools and teachers and hospitals.
Yeah, and we were warning people during the pandemic, this money is not going to last forever. Right. Don't start spending new things. Don't set up new funds. Don't set up new expenditures, because this money is eventually going to wash away, which is what it's doing now.
Yeah, but Josh, telling the legislature not to spend new money and try to save money is like telling a drunken sailor on shore leave to, just stay straight, behave yourself. Don't go out and pick up any wild women or anything. And we know when they get down to Montgomery, wild women and taxes and liquor are all a favorite tool of the trade.
Yeah, no, I mean, everybody could see this coming, and honestly, because, the legislators are essentially children, and, you got to continue to reel them back in and say, no, this money's going to go away, okay, at some point. But, we saw this. I was hoping that, maybe we could adjust our tax, the way our taxes are collected, instead of punishing the least of us the most. But we didn't do that either. And so now we're going to have a serious shortfall, because we've had a lot of legislation over the past couple of years that cut into the tax base. One, for example, is the Choose Act.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to cut $100 million to start with out of our school systems, and it's going to be more than that as we go along. And so those things are going to matter when you start to run out of money. Absolutely,
we're going to leave it right there. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
Speed is one of the biggest factors in a fatal car crash. Your car stops, but your body does not stop at the same time. Your body keeps going, and that could be running into your seatbelt, that could be hitting the airbag. Something has to stop it, and unfortunately, it's something very hard.
There have been times that we've come upon accidents where if people weren't speeding, they'd probably still be alive today.
It's truly dangerous, and it puts everybody at risk.
There's just no point to it. This kind of stuff has got to stop.
Your home is your most valuable asset. But what if someone tried to steal it from you? Property fraud is one of the fastest growing areas of fraud in the country today.
As a district attorney, I've seen firsthand the devastating effects of property fraud. That's why I'm proud to support the Montgomery County Probate Court's REACT program.
REACT is designed to protect your property and to give you peace of mind. By signing up, you'll receive an email notification if a document is filed against your property.
This program is a game changer. It has the potential to prevent fraud and protect countless homeowners throughout Montgomery County.
So don't wait. Sign up for REACT today and protect your home.
Protect your home with REACT. Sign up today.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. There is a bill that will be before the legislature in this coming session that wants to make it into law that women cannot be deprived of contraceptives. And Susan, this is a serious issue for women across the nation, but especially in Alabama, where we have draconian laws enforcing forced childbirth and things like that. But I think there is a faction of the Republican Party that thinks that birth control is immoral. Now, you can go back and say, well, the alternative is a lot worse. But again, this is a law based on religion and not on science or facts. But the thing, and I know you're outraged, is that why do we keep wanting to make women second-class citizens and almost property of the state and their husbands? It's just, my mother, God bless her soul, if she were alive today, she would just be horrified because she was one of those people that fought for women's rights all her life. And to see it stripped away so just cavalierly by our lawmakers is ridiculous.
And this bill in particular, first of all, why are we discussing this?
Yeah.
Why is this a part of our political discussion? Now, it infuriates me. The reason that they're bringing this law is because there's a gap in the Alabama law that has no direct statutes to cover birth control, because it was unheard of to actually need legislation for it. I mean, why do we need legislation to say we want birth control? Why is this a discussion where, these male legislators want to take away our right to contraceptives and your rights too? Let's not forget condoms are involved in that. So unless all y'all out there want to just abstain, you might just speak up a little bit.
So Josh, I mean, it seems as if they want to take us back to the horse and buggy days with all these. They don't want women to have any rights at all, just barefoot and pregnant. And I have to wonder what these lawmakers' wives really think about this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I often wonder about that and how they go home and talk to their wives about some of the stuff that goes on. And I mean, you would think that at some point they would get tired of this nonsense. But this kind of goes back into the whole system that we have in this state about it's the reason why we don't have a sex ed course in schools, to speak of. And I read a story the other day that says Alabama is again in the top 10, according to U.S. News and World Report, in the top 10 states with the most STDs.
Yeah.
And I responded to that with, if only there were a place where all the kids gathered that you could educate them on how these things happen.
Yeah.
But we don't do that, and it's. I mean, I think it goes back to religion on a lot of this stuff. Same with the abortion laws. It goes back to people's religion, and we have pushed aside science and reality and common sense in favor of religion. And that's that. Whenever you govern like that, you're going to have problems. I don't care what religion you choose to base it on. You're going to have problems if you make your government focused on those things instead of on the real world situations that are going on. Listen, it's fine for you to take your religion and have it, control the way you live your life and you want to be, but you can't govern that way. And that's just the reality of it. And we see the consequences every day.
I'll tell you, you better wake up and pay attention. HB 279 was introduced last year covering the same topic, and it failed to advance at all.
I don't think this is going to go anywhere.
I don't think so
because
either.
They have to be seen as so extremely pro-life that anything facing logic is not acceptable. I mean, again, these are people that we know who do not believe what they're saying here, but they say it because they are afraid of losing office. I remember a politician saying one time, what are they going to do? Vote me out? So what? You're not there to please a small number of the base or to keep a job. You're there to do a job for all the people. Just remember, Donald Trump won Alabama by 65%, big number. Expected him to have the big number. But it also shows, if you look at the statistics, the actual numbers, that 63% of Alabamians who were qualified to vote either voted for Kamala Harris or somebody else or didn't vote at all. So this supposed mandate in Alabama to rule like it's some kind of offshoot of Saudi Arabia is not true. It really isn't. But it's those countries, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Syria, that we consider enemies for the most part, or at least frenemies, where these kind of laws are prevalent.
And where we shun the way they treat women over there, but they don't shun themselves for the way they treat us.
Well, it's just gotten just outrageous. I mean, and this whole thing about IVF, there are people still trying to figure out how can they have IVF treatment in Alabama legally. I mean, Josh, it's just out of control.
Yeah, listen, you can't do it. You're going to have to change the law. Somebody's going to have to stand up and they're going to have to change the law. And they're going to have to admit that this ridiculous religious-based concept of life begins at conception, although I will say in this particular instance, they have taken something that is not in any sort of religious literature anywhere, especially in Christianity, and applied this life begins at conception idea. It's nowhere to be found in any sort of religion that I've ever seen. But they've applied it to real life situations or attempted to, and here are the consequences in this. And when you say that, and you say that anything after conception is murder, if you have an abortion or whatever, you can't get around that for IVF. You cannot do it.
Yeah, this was not a widely held belief before the 80s, really.
No, I mean, I hate to go back to the sex education that these legislators did not have available to them, but you cannot have life without that embryo being implanted in the uterus.
Yeah.
Even so, the uterus can still reject that. And it's called, having a miscarriage. So just because you've had egg, meat, sperm does not make for viable life.
Yeah.
It won't exist at that.
Well, and I just wonder, and maybe this is me just being broad-minded, how come they don't want to outlaw guys from releasing sperm? I mean,
well, tell me one law in this country that applies to men's sexual abilities or abilities to reproduce or for a man's body at all.
Well,
name me one.
Nah, there isn't one, but the insurance covers Viagra, so that's all they care about. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
My personal biggest pet peeve is kids who are not properly restrained, whether that be in a booster seat, a car seat, or even a simple seatbelt. Kids, they become projectiles, and it's terrifying.
It absolutely breaks my heart to know that something so innocent could be punished so severely.
Your children rely on you to be that person that says, no, you need to put your seatbelt on.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Just recently, Alabama executed another death row inmate. This inmate had committed a heinous crime or was convicted of a heinous crime, and they put him to death using nitrous oxide, which is unproven, untested, except we know it murders well.
Yeah, we've done it twice
kills.
now.
But lately it seems like, instead of slowing down, capital punishment, we put in an express lane here in Alabama. But Carrie Dale Grayson killed the mother of Jody Haley. And Jody Haley was there at the execution. Now, she never knew her mother because she was a small child when she was murdered. But Miss Haley gave an impassioned speech that if you listen to it with an eager heart and with an open mind, you would question the righteousness of what the state does when it puts someone to death. It was compelling and it was sincere. And she said that eye for an eye was not the way to handle our criminal justice system, and that she felt that man did not deserve to die for what he did.
She did. And I want to point out a couple of really important things she said. She said that in her mind, society had failed Grayson as a child, and her family has suffered for it. If he had had more support as a child, this tragic murder would have probably never happened. And to refer to what you just said, she said, revenge to me, an eye for an eye justification is not right. We use that justification, but in the same breath, we say, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. We have to make up our minds because you can't ride two horses with one behind, I'll put.
Josh, I mean, everybody has an opinion about the death penalty. I happen to be, I am a convert. I used to be for the death penalty, but we put so many innocent people to death. I just am not for it anymore. But what she did here, and it was a compelling argument against the death penalty, but there's also a compelling argument that nitrous oxide is cruel and unusual punishment. But nobody's challenged it to the point where we know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm torn a little on the death penalty as a whole because I think of at times I think I'm against it, and then somebody does something to a kid, and I imagine somebody doing something to my kid, and I'll be honest, I mean, I'd kill him.
Yeah.
And I mean, but that's retribution on my part, and I think that's not something that the state should be involved in. Is retribution, and that's really what it is at this point. I mean, we have at the point where we're having an execution, we have removed that person from society. We have eliminated any threat that person poses on society for the most part, and so now at this point that it's all about the retribution aspect of it. And I can see an argument that's for the state should be better than that, and certainly the state should be better than what we're doing. I think with nitrous oxide, I think we've seen now some evidence of the struggling that goes on, and the fact that so many people say, well, you're essentially suffocating a person to death. And in the most recent one, in the most recent execution that we held prior to it, attorneys for the person we put to death, argued and said, hey, look, why don't we at least have some sort of a sedative, something that is given to this person prior to it being administered, so we remove that horrific result from this. And I don't understand why we don't do that. I mean, because if we're going to be better, and that's where we're going to have to approach this from, we're going to have to be the better side of this. We can't come at this in the same vein as the people who kill. We can't come with that same attitude. We have to have the moral high ground. And I don't understand the arguments for that and why we can't take that on and make it as humane as possible.
Exactly. If we're going to live under the death penalty as a state, I think it behooves us to make it at least an easier transition. I mean, making it gruesome and cruel is just, it's.
And we look.
I don't have words for it.
We've changed our thoughts as a nation on this, in that we used to just hang people. I mean, look, if you go back to some of our ancestors that came from Europe, the death penalty there was quite severe, drawn, quartered and all that. But the thing is that if you really are pro-life and you really do believe that all life is precious, then how do you murder someone? Even if it's state-sanctioned murder. But that's an argument that I can't have with anyone, because you got to start with a false premise to begin with. But I think the thing is that the reason we can't use those drugs is because they're owned by European companies, pharmaceutical companies, who will not sell them to us to kill people with. But this is what we have. But it's not going to get settled anytime soon, because it is part of this hardline right position, always has been, probably always will be. I do think there's some great success over at the Alabama Bureau of Pardons and Paroles with Cam Ward, who's done a great job over there. Cam Ward is a sincere advocate. And Susan, they've got some programs over there, especially the Prep Center, that are helping people transition from prison to life outside.
And that's something I've got personal experience with. When we lived in Pell City, I was involved in a lot of things like the drug program over there. Helping with nonviolent female offenders, getting them back out of jail and getting them back into society. And that's what they're basically doing with this. This is a 90-day reentry program that offers education, vocational training, counseling, drug counseling. The thing with people coming out of prison that you need to understand is you can't just turn them loose.
Yeah.
All right, that doesn't work. Your recidivism rate is ridiculous. And what Cam's program here has so far had is zero recidivism. What you need to do, because these people have been locked up, they've been told when to get up, they've been told when to go to bed, they've been told when to eat, had their meals made for them. And a lot of them don't know how to re-enter society. They don't know which is too much laundry detergent to put in a washing machine, down to simple things that you really don't think about.
Right.
But if you give them those tools and you give them the training that they need to actually be able to feed themselves and support themselves, you see a great flourishing and zero recidivism.
Well, Josh, so I think Susan filibustered us on that one, but let's take about 30 seconds.
Listen, no, I agree completely. If you give them the right tools, one of them could even be president of the United States.
Well, there you go. Well, we're going to leave it right there. You've been watching the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.